Okay, in the last video, we were talking about the three main fingerprint patterns, the arch, the loop, and the whirl, as they were defined by Francis Galton. They are numerically the most commonly found fingerprint patterns. And in fact, most people will either have loops and arches or loops and whirls, and there are various different distributions of loops and arches and whirls amongst different people. But they are by far and away the most common fingerprint patterns that you're going to see on your hands. So have a look at your own hands now, maybe look at your index finger and see if you have any one of those three patterns on your hand. And if you're not sure, well, let's explain how Galton decided to classify the fingerprint patterns, and that will help you to identify whatever fingerprint patterns you have on your hands. So the most important thing to look at when you're looking at the hand is something that's called a tri-radius. And if you look at the loop fingerprint pattern here, what you can see is the loop fingerprint pattern has one tri-radius. Now the tri-radius is like a tri-formed marking in the skin ridges, which is found to the side of the loop pattern there. So you can see the loop that comes up and around and goes over there like that. So that is the loop fingerprint pattern right there. The loop basically, uh, the loop basically shows up in that way because you have this this triradial point on the side like that. So the triradius comes up or around, and you have a loop coming up over there. We can look at again on this handprint here. You can see in this one the triradius is slightly higher. It's making a formation like that, and you can still see the loop is coming up and over there like that. And on this one here, the triradius is actually quite located quite to the side there. So it's there are various places in which these triradii can occur. You have to look very carefully. But the characteristic thing of the loop pattern is that it has this kind of wave that goes up and around it like that. But the most important thing and the defining characteristic of the loop is that it has one tri-radius. And that's the definition that Galton gave to the fingerprint patterns. He said, when you're trying to identify a fingerprint pattern, look for the tri-radius. It doesn't really matter where it is so much. That's, well, what it matters is the number of the tri-radius. So look for that. And art and loop fingerprint patterns always have one tri-radius. And that's how you know it's a loop. All right. So the next fingerprint pattern to consider is the arch fingerprint pattern. And as you can see from this particular examples, if you look carefully, you'll see there is no triangulated formation in this pattern. The arch is like a humpback bridge. It comes up and it goes over like that. And you can follow the ridges around and you can see, maybe you can consider it like a little hill, little hillock going up and over like that. So it has this kind of quality to it. The arch quality is like uh, a hill, a hillock, the arch of a bridge. It's a little mound. But the characteristic thing about the arch fingerprint pattern is that it has no tri-radius. So there is no tri-radius in the arch fingerprint pattern. So if we look at these examples here, these are lots of different examples of arch fingerprint patterns. You can see there are quite a lot number of variations in them, but the characteristic thing of all of these examples is they don't have a tri-radius. Sometimes these arches can be quite high, and you get in this case here, you can see that's a really quite high arch. Sometimes they're quite low. So it doesn't really matter too much about the height or the way that the hill is shaped, as it were. But what does matter is that there is no tri-radius in the middle of the fingerprint at all. So that's the characteristic feature um, of a arch fingerprint pattern is there is no tri radius. Now, when it comes to whirl fingerprint patterns, whirl fingerprint patterns are obviously very easy to spot because of their style. It's pretty easy to see the swirling, whirling shape in the middle of the whirl fingerprint pattern. And if you look carefully, you'll notice something distinctive with the triradius as well. So that here you have the whirl with the triradius on both sides of the pattern. So basically the distinctive characteristic of the whirl is that it has two triradii, one on either side of the pattern. And if you trace the lines around, what you notice is that they actually go all the way around underneath, and they always go right up and over the pattern as well. So the pattern is a very enclosed formation. The ridges encircle the whole thing, and in order to make the patterning have that circular shape, there is the need to have these two different triradii. Again, they can be placed in slightly different places. Sometimes they're quite evenly placed. Sometimes one's a little bit higher than the other. That's not so crucial. The crucial thing is you get the combination of the spiral shape or sometimes concentric circles, but you can see in all of these examples, these are all spiral shaped whirls. Looking at the middle of them, they're all spiraling their shape all that way, going that way around, and actually all going in the same direction as well. But that's not the key characteristic of a whirl pattern. The key characteristic, according to Galton, is the two triradii. So when you're trying to identify the whirl, you're looking at see that the whirl has two triradii. And that's the Galton system for classification. So basically what you have is arches have no triradii, loops have one triradii, and whirls have two triradii. And as you can see from these examples, there's lots of different shapes to the whirl, but they are all characterized by two triradii. You'll see them on either side of this spiral pattern in all of these examples. Sometimes as you can see with this one, sometimes the whirl is quite a kind of elongated loop like that. So they do take different form and do have different shapes to them, but they're always characterized by the presence of two triradii. So that's basically the classification system that Francis Galton brought to the world. How to identify the primary means by identifying the fingerprint patterns is to do with the number of triradii they have. The arch has no triradii, the loop has one triradius, and the whirl has two triradii. And the thing is that when you have this classification system, what you come to realize is that these fingerprint patterns account for about 85% of all the fingerprint patterns that are to be found in the human hand and on the human foot. So that's pretty much all of the fingerprint patterns will be like that. As I said earlier, the loop pattern is probably the dominant fingerprint pattern in the entire world. But some parts of the world people have lots and lots of whirls. And the arch always comes third. So it's predominantly loops, secondarily whirls, and third of all arches, and in various combinations as well. So that makes up 85% of the fingerprint patterns. So now we shall pause and then we shall go and look at the minor thematic patterns.